Hey everybody, I'm Jason Wood, host of the Armed and Ready podcast and your VA loan guy. I wanted to welcome you to another episode today. We have a really good guest with us, Knight Campbell, who is a Navy veteran and a total leadership guru. So we wanted to welcome you, Knight, to the show and thank you for talking to us a little bit today about your past and your military experience and everything.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Excited to be here and share whatever maybe I can help. And any good leadership guru would tell you that they don't have it all figured out and probably never will. So I'll dive in with you.
That's the truth, man. Well, for those that aren't familiar with who you are, I think you have a pretty cool story. And if you want to kind of take us through that, but you're in the Navy, you went to the Naval Academy, and have really pursued leadership as your career path now. So walk us through that. I tried going to the military academy, so I have a little bit of an idea of, the process of trying to get in and so forth, but walk us through, like what triggered in your brain to say, hey, I want to try and get into an academy, and was it always a dream to be in the military? And just kind of walk us through, that process a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll try to keep it somewhat short. My grandfather flew for the Navy and went to the Naval Academy in 1935, which is, I saw his class ring as a kid and the crest was pretty much worn off. It's pretty cool to see that. And that put the idea in my head. And, honestly, I went back and taught at the Naval Academy. I think about this or thought about this a lot. Everybody feels this pressure, like, oh, I wanted to serve my country and valor and bravery and honor. And it seemed like a good idea. And you got paid to go and you had a career afterwards. And that's honestly a lot of why I went. And then all those other things, kind of, you learn those along the way. You have experiences with your sailors and you step into leadership, and then you see that in action. At least that's the way it was for me. I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like going to school at the Naval Academy? I mean, I know like your freshman year, your plebe year can be pretty intense. But what was it like?
It was terrible. And I'll say, the day I drove across the bridge, we call it the OSHIT bridge, because when you're coming back, you're like, oh no, here we go again, another semester. I was like, I think I was talking to my girlfriend then, wife now, and I was like, we're never coming back here. And then, you grow up a little bit and you realize what an amazing opportunity that was and what all you did learn and the incredible friends you made through that experience. And I ended up back there teaching and absolutely loved it the second time around. And there was a lot, I say that facetiously, there's so much good in that place and in the culture and the institution itself that I just wasn't mature enough to see the first time around and really appreciate it much more now.
That's awesome. So once you graduated, obviously you're commissioned. And what was your job in the Navy?
I was a helicopter pilot by trade, or started out that way, and kind of fell into the leadership development world after going through flight school and flying and deploying a couple of times and seeing how powerful leadership could be, right? Seeing out on deployment when you have this amazing opportunity on a destroyer to really lead the people you're leading without a lot of interference, which is uncommon in the military, right? Normally you have someone looking and talking and emailing and on video teleconference right in combat these days, and it just doesn't happen on a destroyer because we don't have good bandwidth. So it's a blessing for us, and I realize how much responsibility and how much impact you can have as someone who cares as a leader. And then I went back to the Naval Academy again, mostly because I wanted to co-locate with my wife. And it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did, because I got that opportunity to teach leadership and dive into it and study it. You experience it in the fleet, and then it's different to study it and say, oh, that's what I saw, or that's not what I saw, or, put the theory to action there. And that's where I kind of got this bug to pursue leadership and development and try to do it the best way possible.
That's great. Any interesting stories you have from your military time? How long did you serve?
So I still am a reservist, and this is year 14, I guess, which is kind of crazy.
Wow.
I did 10 years on active duty before I left the active, went reserves and started this career.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you got to see like some pretty cool parts of the world because you're on a ship, right?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
what was one of your favorite spots that you got to see?
Whew. I liked all of them. I loved Hong Kong. It was just a cool experience to go there. And I really liked the Philippines because Manila is this place where there's chic, ultra urban, modern building right next to old Spanish and US influence, right next to, extreme poverty. And it's just an interesting way to experience the human experience and see that dramatic shift in a block of a city. So I really liked Manila, and I could go on and on. There are so many places. Kota Kinabalu, one of my favorite memories, climbing a 13,000 foot mountain with some friends on the air deck and people from the ship, and coming down. And then there's this little bar where you could buy fish at the market and then just go grill it and buy, $1 or two beers. So those little memories that stick with you. That was really
Yeah,
fun.
that's really cool. Um, so you got really into, I guess, mountain climbing a little bit. I saw that you're doing quite a bit of that to help you with, kind of teaching and leadership and how it all ties together. But tell me a little bit about, some of the mountain climbing things, like, because you've done some impressive stuff now as it reflects back on, what you've done with, climbing mountains and that athlete in you,
Yeah, so funny. So in active duty in the Navy, I was a triathlete. My wife was a sponsored triathlete. Went and competed for the Marine Corps in Switzerland, and we were like, "That's all we're ever going to do." I can't imagine doing anything else. And again, a couple of years later, a little more maturity, and I'm like, well, actually, life changes, and that's not it. And mountain climbing is now that thing. Hopefully, it sticks. But yeah, mountain climbing in, I guess, 2006 when we graduated, my wife and I went and tried to do Mount Whitney. It's the highest peak in the lower 48, 14,500 roughly, and we were completely unprepared. We went up with these crampons that don't have points on the toes. We were about 1,000 feet up this ice chute and kept slipping and falling. We're like, this is a really bad situation. So obviously we loved it and just kept wanting to go back and back. And so we want to climb the high point in every state, which has been awesome because you see, like, when else would you, hopefully you're not from Kansas, but when else would you go explore Kansas?
Right. Yeah.
Turns out Kansas has some awesome stuff that, it's really cool to have that reason to go check it out. All of our states have something to check out. And that just led into more climbing. We'd go to, Montana. Now we need to learn how to rock climb. We'd go to Mount Rainier in Washington. Now we need to know how to deal with glaciers. And over the 10 years of active duty, we just, every chance we got, would go climb a mountain and get a little more experience. And then when we went back to the Naval Academy, the mountaineering club there was looking for people to help guide them on Mount Washington in New Hampshire. Are you familiar with that mountain?
No.
Yeah, it's one of the deadliest mountains in the United States.
Okay. Wow.
Particularly in the winter, it's got 100-mile-an-hour winds, negative 80-degree wind chill. Every time we guided it, it was completely whited out, so you couldn't see where you're going. And that's where I started to realize, like, I was teaching leadership in the classroom. I'm pretty good at it. Still, a third of the class was usually, like, nodding off. I think I'm doing a good job. What's wrong with you? No one fell asleep in 80-mile-an-hour winds in whiteout conditions. They were there.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
And what an amazing way to tap into who you are and what your strengths are and what your limits and breaking points might be and how you show up as a leader. Because, we'd have leaders of different groups of people on the mountain, and ask someone, hey, is everyone okay? And they're like, I don't know. I'm just trying to, like, stay alive myself. And that's a good insight, as a leader. We all hit that point, and we need to have a plan for it. So
yeah. So what was the, what was the thought process on transitioning to, leadership as really like your civilian career path now? Like, and what does that entail? Do you do like consulting for organizations or individuals, or tell us a little bit about the business side?
Oh man, I could go on and on. What is that? Yeah, what's different about us? First of all, the outdoors is an incredible place. It makes you happier, healthier, more creative, and there's a lot of science that backs that up. So it's kind of interesting that all I really need to do is take leaders outside, and we've already created a ton of value. But what we do at Caring Leadership is this experiential learning. So we use the theory, we use the research that shows how people learn, and what we do is we experience something, and hopefully we take some time to reflect on it and say, well, that didn't go so well, or that went really well. Why did it work? And then we try to transfer it to the rest of our life. And a lot of leaders don't have time to do that. They don't, we're going from thing to thing to thing, and we're always kind of frenetic, and you never have time to sit down and say, well, what worked and what didn't, and what kind of person, how do I want to show up? What kind of habits and character do I want to have? And that's what we build. So it wouldn't call it consulting. That's more telling people what to do. It's more taking people outdoors, challenging them. In all of our events, we like to, tell people, we hope you wish you didn't sign up at some point, and we hope it's not the last moment. Like hopefully that's in the middle somewhere. But that's where we learn. People need to be uncomfortable, and the mountains bring a lot of discomfort and just these incredible moments of awe and perspective and peace when you sit, you watch a thunderstorm roll away after it's trounced you and you're soaking wet and cold, and then you got a campfire and things are okay again. You're like, wow, if I can deal with that, I can deal with anything. So that's a lot of what we do in Caring Leadership. But as a veteran, and I'm thinking about this, I've got a presentation for North San Diego Chamber on Friday. So I'm thinking about this a little bit. I made a lot of mistakes. It wasn't, looking back, it seems like a pretty clear path to where I am, but it was not a clear path. And I went down a lot of wrong roads. I did a whole semester in a PhD program that I hated, and it was incredibly difficult to quit that. I was getting paid. They were giving me a stipend. I was getting a free education and a PhD from a great university. And it's hard to turn down. And I think like veterans need to hear that. They need to understand that you're going to make mistakes, and think about it. Breaks my heart to see all these people who were in my shoes when I was there just saying, well, I guess program management is what I am good at. I'll just go do program management. It pays good. And then they hate it. You talk to all these people and they hate their lives. They're working 80-hour weeks and something that they have no passion for, and they never knew how to dig into what they care about, what their values are, and where they want to make a difference in the world. Because for better or worse, the military tells you that, and it's a good thing. Like, we need to be behind the mission and service.
Right.
You just like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know. No one's telling me what my values should be or what I should care about.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting when you mention the outdoors part, and I'm not a mountain climber by any means, but used to be a pretty big like downhill ski person. And so
yeah.
I know like the mountains for me would provide kind of that time for reflecting and retrospect a little bit, to just have some thought, right? There's no distractions, phones and computers and people, right? You're just by yourself, the mountain air, something about the mountain air, right? And just the peacefulness up there. It's totally relatable for me. Like, as you're talking about this, I'm just thinking about, like my job now and doing loans and managing a team and everything. And I think about often like, man, when am I going to get some time to sit and think about how we're going to improve a process or implement a process, or, like, how am I going to sit and just spend some time thinking? And so it's truly one of those things. I mean, like anything you want to accomplish, you got to schedule it out, right? You have to make the time for it, because the time won't create itself. But yeah, it's just, you're just like alarm bells are going off every time you're mentioning that stuff, because I see myself struggling with the same thing,
Yeah.
just taking that time out. You got to do it.
I struggle with it, and it's my business.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles with that, and the time outside. So what was your favorite place to ski? I love skiing and snowboarding too.
Gosh, I would say I probably got a tie. One of my favorite places is Kirkwood,
Okay.
in Tahoe, and Mammoth.
Nice.
Really, really love those. Now, my exposure in skiing is everywhere in the Sierras. I think I've skied every resort in the Sierras.
Oh,
Uh, but nothing, and I've skied a couple in Colorado, but nothing in Utah or Washington or on the East Coast. So I don't have that to compare it against. But from what I understand, the argument is the Sierras is probably some of the best skiing in our country anyway. So yeah, skied some really beautiful places. Where's yours?
it's a tough question. I love Washington. I love Big Sky in Montana, and we do a lot of backcountry skiing, and the Sierras are incredible. It's funny. I started out, we struggled halfway up Mount Whitney and had to turn around because it was the right thing to do. And then after 2 more times of attempting, we eventually skied it. So
Oh, there you go.
it was an incredible experience coming down through the backcountry there.
Yeah, that place is definitely on my list. I need to go take 4 or 5 days and go ski there. I mean, the mountain's humongous, so it's going to take some time. But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite things to do is to ski.
Yeah, that's so cool. We talk a lot about flow in our business and trying to help leaders and teams access flow. And it's just a state of mind where you're totally focused. It's that, you start in the morning and then your spouse or one of your employees knocks on the door and they're like, hey, it's dinner time. That moment where you're so totally into it. And skiing, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is the researcher who came up with this. And he talks about skiing a lot, that edge to edge, that perfect turn where you're just totally immersed in the experience. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I never thought of that before. It's cool. Who's a leadership influence for you? Any name like any famous names or any people that really helped influence you?
Yeah, lots of people. It's so funny. I think about this, and most of my best bosses and best leaders I didn't like at the time. They made me uncomfortable. They pushed me. I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to go to work with this person. It was like, oh no, they're going to call me out for my mistakes and they're going to hold me accountable to who I could be. So there are a lot of stories like that. One of the leaders, I was just talking to my business partner this morning, Master Amos, I guess Grandmaster now, Amos Johnson. He was the person who ran the Naval Academy karate team where I met my wife, and I was the captain there. And we had a master before that, and he kind of believed in this iron sharpens iron, and you have to be hard and all of this, which is not untrue. And then Master Johnson came in, and I was kind of getting into leadership, and I was trying to like act cool. And I was like, oh, sir, like a lot of these people don't look like they can hack it. Like they're not going to be hard enough. And he just looked at me. He didn't even know me. He looked at me. He's like, well, I believe in making lemonade out of lemons, so I think they'll be just fine. And, that stuck with me. It still sticks with me. I get a little choked up thinking about it. And, I thought I was like hard and all special. Really, I was one of the lemons he was crafting at the time. I learned so much from that man in terms of leadership. So yeah, Grandmaster Johnson would be one. Probably not, a lot of people don't know. I don't listen to, the leadership gurus. I don't know if I'm that too much. We like to really look into research and different, empirical theories, and it's boring. It's boring stuff. You got to distill it and pull it out, these 30-page papers in Leadership Quarterly or whatever. But those are those people that make you see the world in a different way, I think are the best leaders.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I sign up and have private coaching, for my business, which there's a lot of leadership training and coaching in there. Mm-hmm. And no one famous that you would hear of or find a New York Times bestseller, but there are the famous ones too. And probably one of my favorites is John Maxwell, and just really love reading the stuff that he has. And I've seen him speak a few times too. And
that's great.
Yeah, super brilliant guy. And carved his path in the same career fields, into leadership. And clearly he's a known name for that. But yeah, I think sometimes it's those unknown people like you were mentioning that have the greatest impact on us. Because any of us could go buy a book and pick it up and honestly gain something from it, right? But that personal one-on-one experience, I think that's one of the cool things about the military that we've all got a chance to experience, which is different than like corporate America. you know. The one thing the military is, one of the things the military is really good at doing is creating leaders. And like anything, there's good ones and bad ones, but I think one of the biggest takeaways that we get as, service members is that opportunity to work with different leaders who are being trained to be leaders, right? Which is different than in the civilian world, because oftentimes, your leader, quote unquote, in the civilian world isn't necessarily being trained to lead. They're in a position of authority for whatever reasons, and probably well deserved. But typically the leadership training piece of it isn't there. So definitely a cool experience that, we've all got to have. And seeing the different styles and stuff,
It's a skill. It's something, you're not born a leader. Some people are naturally talented, for sure, but anyone can be a leader if they work at it, and no one will be a good leader if they don't put the effort and the reps in to have good character. I think it's so interesting too. Often I get this response of people saying, well, you're in the military, what do you know about leadership? Like, don't people just tell you to do stuff and then you do it? And thought about that a lot, but really it's the opposite, right? Like, you don't have bonuses, you have no extrinsic or outside incentive to give people, and you're asking them to put their life in jeopardy. It's profound, the leadership that you need to have to ask people to do that when you can't even say, like, I'll pay you more. Like, you have a flat rate. So I think the military does breed really great leaders for that reason. You have to, connect with people, inspire them, speak to them on their level, tailor your style and your approach to that particular person, bring the best out in that person, because you're not going to get another one either. You typically can't fire people. You get who you get, and if you don't make the most of it, if you don't make the lemonade out of the lemons, then your unit will suffer. So.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, in the civilian world, you can fire people and you can incentivize them with bonuses and performance this and performance that, but that's not true in the military. Just like you said, you've got who you've got, and you got to make the best out of it. And it's funny that you hear that people don't think there's a lot of leadership in the military, because, I see it in the same light that you do, obviously having served, but, you're asking people to risk their life. And, not only am I asking you to risk your life, I'm asking you in this next effort to give 110% of everything you have, both mentally, physically, and emotionally, for the next X amount of time. And you could live or die at the end. Let's go.
Yeah. And that X amount of time will probably be extended, as we all know, in the military.
Right. Yeah. It likely will be. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to learn on the civilian side too. And I've seen increasingly great leaders on both sides. So that's what the world needs these days, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're this 2020. I saw an interesting meme on social media that's something to the effect of, like, let's just be done with 2020. I mean, this year has been just a three-ring circus. If you look at everything that's happened and happening right now, what a wild year. And with, a presidential election coming up at the end of it, it's not going to get any less wild between now and then, right? It's just going to be a crazy ride. So yeah, I mean, leadership is certainly one of those things where we're all in desperate need of it right now, at every level, not just in our jobs or just at the presidency level, but there's, all the levels in between. That ability and that need for leadership is so great. What's next on the horizon for you in your business, and where do you see yourself trekking and goals you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, great question. Our vision is to create chapters in select cities across the U.S. And, the story that I envision is a CEO from Miami, New York, San Diego, and Seattle, all sitting around a campfire in the Grand Canyon or some amazing place, talking about some leadership issue or challenge, and helping each other solve those problems. So that's the vision where we're going. And every trip outside is another step in that direction. So it's pretty cool. We get to, go rock climbing or backpacking or camping, and that's success. So that's the vision, and finding the right people, and half of those maybe are military and half of them are not, because you need that balance. But people who know how to lead and people who know how to keep people safe. And I look for, I talk to people who guide for us, and I say, I want you to keep people safe, but I want you to put them way further into that risk envelope than normal guide service would be. I want people to be uncomfortable, to feel like something really could happen, not just, oh, well, Knight will keep me safe, but like, oh, is Knight paying attention? Like, I don't know if this is right, because that's, again, where you learn. That's where you're like, oh, I guess I have to make a decision. And then you can go and reflect on that decision that was real. It's not like sitting around a table and, doing trust falls.
Well, right. And I think it's probably become cliche, but put yourself in uncomfortable situations, right, to really learn and grow. And it's probably one of those things that's said so much it doesn't have quite the impact that it really deserves. But, if we just had that really cool series with Michael Jordan and their run, that was on TV and stuff. And I've seen different quotes from him and other athletes, but, it's indicative of seeing a quote from an athlete where they're talking about, constantly putting themselves in uncomfortable positions, uncomfortable situations, which has forced them to get better, right, at their skill or their trade. And I think sometimes we hear that and we think, oh yeah, that's a Michael Jordan deal. I'm a guy that works in an office, right? Like it's equally as applicable in that if you really have any desire to grow and change and be better, right? Because if it was just showing up and that was it, we'd all be the best of the best and amazing, right?
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
It's not, and it doesn't have to look like a mountain. Like, obviously that's my shtick, but asking someone for feedback that you probably don't want to hear, or giving someone that feedback that they need to hear, but you don't want to give. I mean, those are super uncomfortable things to do. Going in and, like, right now, the world crisis right now, like, having these tough conversations about race and how do you wrap your head around that and do the right thing as a privileged white male. Really uncomfortable. Like, we have a lot of opportunities to be uncomfortable, and we don't take them often. We often, go the other way and try to create a backstory that makes it okay to not have been uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're totally right. Totally right on that. Well, Knight, I really appreciate you giving us some time today. I know that you've got a lot going on in your business and prepping for your next event with the chamber, but really was a pleasure to meet you. Another local San Diegan military guy, and learned a lot today. And I hope that we provided some value for our audience as well, because super, super good stuff, man. So thanks so much for sharing with us. How can people connect with you if they want to reach out for one of your leadership courses or something?
Yeah, easiest way is the website, cairnleadership.com, CAIRN leadership.com. It's just the stack of stones that people leave to show people the way when they might not know it. Cairn, Knight at cairnleadership.com is my email, and 410-980-6458 is the number. Little Annapolis throwback with the 410. So
there you go.
Happy to hear from people. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff, and any opportunity we have to pay it forward to veterans who are transitioning, I think, is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I agree with you too, man. And thanks so much. And for information, everyone can go to valoneguy.us. Also, connect with me. We can get you connected with Knight and in his group there too. If you have any interest or any questions that we can answer for you or thoughts, we would love to get your thoughts. So leave us a comment, hit a like or a share, and let's all spread the word on leadership. We need it. We need it bad in our country and our communities right now. So hopefully some of this message can resonate with those that you know and love. Thanks again for coming by. Armed and Ready podcast. Appreciate it, guys. Take care.